Good morning, everyone. I hope you're up and going strong. Have you been to the gym? Have you went walking? I made it to the gym up and early. Can you believe it's already Monday? I cannot believe it. It's crazy. Where'd the weekend go? It flew by. Oh, goodness. Welcome anyway. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know where you're coming in from, but hello. This is my Moving Forward series. Working on 3 principles: building a strong foundation, goal setting, consistent goal setting, and professional development or self-development, which it falls in. There's a lot of developments, right, for that. So I am currently working on the Moving Forward series by going over 52 women of the Bible, which has been extremely interesting for me. I love studying women. It empowers me, strengthens me, helps build my spirituality, that strong foundation that we need to have in case something comes along and sort of knocks you off your feet. You got a foundation to fall back to, right? So we have been going over several women. We're into, this will be number 16, Naomi, today. We've been following, and this Bible study I'm following is Jean Seswerda. I like it. She's following Genesis all the way through at least to the birth of Christ. I'm not sure how far she follows, but so far we've been able to follow the lineage of Christ going down. I think we just got to almost to King David, and how God wanted to keep the lineage pure. And so she's sort of going all the way in that order, it seems like. So we've talked about goodness. We've talked about Eve and Adam and Sarah and Abraham, and then Hagar, who was Sarah's handmaiden. We talked about Lot's wife and how she looked back and shouldn't have because she didn't have faith, or she didn't want to leave the evil life behind, was turned to a pillar of salt. We talked about Rebecca, how she went out to the well to meet a servant of Abraham's to wed Isaac. We talked about Rachel and Leah, the 2 sisters. Rachel was the pretty sister, the younger one, and Leah was the older one. And how Jacob had traveled to their land to get away from his brother, who was trying to slay him. And he immediately loved Rachel, wanted her hand in marriage. The father-in-law sort of tricked him into marrying the older one first, Leah, and then the second daughter. So he ended up marrying both of them, but worked for 14 years for their father. Tamar, the daughter-in-law of Judea, she had kind of a rough time because she was married to Judah's son, and Judah sort of liked the brothels and ended up getting into marrying, I believe, a Canaanite, and so for some reason, their ways were a little bit more evil. And so he lost his first son that was married to Tamar. He died. And so she married the second son. The second son didn't want to give her any children because he didn't want to part with his money inheritance. So Judah ended up, Tamar ended up tricking him, Judah, into getting her pregnant, and she got pregnant with twins. So then we went to Potiphar's wife. Potiphar's wife was, she was kind of evil in her own way. That's when Joseph lived there, and she wanted him badly and lied about him coming on to her. And so Joseph fled that area. And then there were 2 mothers of Moses, Jochebed and the Pharaoh's daughter. So we talked about how Jochebed, at that time, the Pharaoh was putting all the firstborn male sons to death. And so Jochebed wanted to save her baby and put Moses, and we've heard that story, I'm sure, put him in the Nile. The Pharaoh's daughter found him and raised him. Then we talked about Miriam, who's Joseph's older sister. Sort of the betrayal she went through with Moses. She was jealous, and sort of her life. We followed that as well. And then we talked about Deborah, who is an awesome warrior and judge of those days, and actually freed the Israelites from bondage. And then we talked about Jael, who Jael was also a pretty cool woman who, after Deborah defeated the enemy, the head of the enemy, the only one that lived through the battle, went to hide in this Jael's husband's tent. This Jael actually put a spike through his head to kill him. So she's pretty cool. Then we talked about Delilah. Delilah was the one who, remember how she, Delilah was, she had, trying to think, Samson and Delilah. So Samson was the one that couldn't cut his hair. He was a fierce warrior, was defeating everyone. And I think it was the Philistines attacked Delilah into tricking him to find out what his power was. And she ended up tricking him into cutting his hair, and then he had no power left. So now we're at Naomi, and I believe King David was part of Samson's lineage, which eventually leads to Christ. So today we're talking about Naomi. I didn't really study. Hopefully it'll come out how she's related. I think that it's following that line though. So her name means my joy or pleasant. That's cool, huh? Her character, she was suffering a threefold tragedy. Naomi refused to hide her sorrow or bitterness. Believing in God's sovereignty, she attributed her suffering to his will. But her fixation on circumstances, both past and present, led to hopelessness. A kind and loving mother-in-law, she inspired unusual love and loyalty in her daughters-in-law. Okay, this is Ruth. So we're down into Ruth now. Ruth 1, 4, 13 through 7. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem in Judea, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. Excuse me. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi, and the names of the 2 sons were Mahalan and Kilian. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judea, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Ophrah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Kilian also died. So, wow, Naomi lost her husband and 2 sons. And Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. Goodness. When she heard in Moab that the Lord had came to the aid of his people by providing food for them, Naomi and her daughter-in-laws prepared to return home from there. So they were all widows at that time. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judea. Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who would become your husbands? Return home, my daughters." At this they wept again. Then Ophrah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, and Ruth clung to her. So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth, the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. Then Naomi took Ruth's child, laid him in her lap. Later on, well, it's kind of skipping some stuff because Naomi ended up Ruth ended up marrying a wealthy farmer later on. Oh, this kitty, I'm telling you. Then Naomi took Ruth's child, laid him in her lap, and cared for him. The women living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. So it's really the story about how Ruth ended up getting remarried and then had a son, and how Naomi's life was once fulfilled again, because she really couldn't. She lost a husband and two sons. That would be hard for anyone, wouldn't it? Very difficult, very difficult. So this is Naomi's life and times. Pictures of the bloated stomachs and empty eyes of children dying of hunger hover in our minds long after the television is turned off. Famine today, just as the Bible times, is a great destroyer of the weak, of helpless children and defenseless elderly. The cries of mothers unable to save their hungry children echo throughout the years, a painful reminder of our dependence on the earth for our subsistence. There were 2 rainy seasons in Palestine, October, November, and March and April. This is interesting. I like this one. When rain didn't fall during those 2 periods, famine often resulted. Famine also occurred when hail or insects destroyed the food supply, or when invading armies devastated crops to bring and captured people into submission. Throughout Scripture, God uses famine to bring about his purposes. Deuteronomy 28:21-24 gives a vivid description of the famine that would come if God's people disobeyed him. Do you think that still happens today? Abraham and Isaac and Jacob all fled to Egypt because of famine in the land of Palestine. The events of the worldwide famine brought Joseph and then his father, Jacob, and his brothers to Egypt, where they eventually became the slaves of the pharaohs. In the book of Ruth, Naomi and her husband flee the famine in Israel, and through their flight and its subsequent events, God brings Ruth into his holy plan as an ancestor of God's son, Jesus. Okay, there we go. So Ruth must have married into it. In the New Testament, Jesus predicted that famine would be one of the signs of the ends of the ages. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all have that, 24:13 and 21. In the book of Acts, we learn that a believer by the name of Agabus foretold a severe famine, Acts 11:28. The next verse then reveals the opportunity that gave the believers to share with each other. In one of the scripture's most somber prophecies, Amos tells of the time when God will bring about another sort of famine. I will send a famine through the land, not a famine of food or thirst for water, but a famine of hearing the words of the Lord. Amos 8:11. In the past, God had always listened and responded when his people cried out to him. But Amos told of a time to come when their cries would be met with a frightening silence. Ooh, that's scary, scary, scary. Okay, our life and times. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ, asked Paul. Shall trouble or hardship or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger of sword? But then Paul answers his own question with that wonderful believer's cry of victory. Nothing, not even famine, will ever separate us from God's love. And remember, that's why Christ was given to us, so that we would always have answer to prayers. He died for our sins, right? So thank goodness we're not living in those times. I mean, we think we have it rough when toilet paper's scarce. We don't have it near as rough as these people did, I'm saying. So that's Naomi and her 2 daughter-in-laws. Tomorrow we'll talk about Ruth, the one daughter-in-law who ended up marrying to become part of the lineage of Christ. So I did find some good quotes, but I just didn't read them have them now. And I thought what I did is I put quotes about joyous people, because Naomi, well, it sounds like she kind of wasn't. Well, I mean, I don't know how you survive losing a husband and 2 kids, so I'm not saying anything. But that's what I did, look up quotes. Enjoy the little things and be joyful, for one day you may look back and realize they were actually the things that mattered. Joy does not simply happen to us. We have to choose joy and keep choosing it every day. That's Henry J.M. Nowen. The other one was unknown. The trick is to enjoy life. Don't wish away your days waiting for better ones ahead. Ooh, see, I have to concentrate on being mindful of the present day every day because I'm always way ahead of myself. That's Marjorie Pay Hickley. Find joy in everything you choose to do, every job, relationship, home. It's your responsibility to love it or change it. Chuck Palahniuk. Okay, so who was Naomi in the Bible story? So this author, let's see if I can find out. Well, it's www.womeninthebible.net. I don't see an author at this point, but I'll let you know. So 3 women in a foreign land without money or protection. The situation seems hopeless. You ever been there? I definitely have. They have lost everything, and the oldest woman, Naomi, mother-in-law to the other 2, decides to return home to Judea. Looking for a husband, Naomi returns to Bethlehem with one of the younger women, Ruth. They settle back in Naomi's, so she was looking for a husband. Naomi's village community. Naomi notices that Boaz, a rich kingsman, is attracted to Ruth, so one of the daughter-in-laws. So Naomi sets things up. Boaz seems reluctant to act, so Naomi takes a hand in matters and instructs Ruth on how to catch her man. Ruth and Boaz marry, and Naomi has a grandson. That's pretty cool. 3 destitute women. Naomi's story has a bleak beginning. She was a foreigner in Moab, a country near to but hostile to her native country, Judea. She has been a married woman with 2 grown sons, in other words, comfortably off and secure, but she now loses everything. Sometimes we go through that, don't we? Her husband was dead, and so were her 2 fine sons. She seemed to have inherited nothing, no land or goods, and her only option was to return to her native village where she owned a little piece of land. I'm surprised because I'm surprised most things never went to women in those days. I'm surprised she actually had land. She told her 2 daughters-in-law, Ophrah and Ruth, of her decision, prepared to bid them goodbye. They should, she said, go back to their own mothers. Curiously, not fathers' homes. Maybe the father didn't let them return or something. Interesting. Neither of them wanted to leave her, but she says a lot about Naomi as a mother-in-law. But it says, which says a lot about, so they really loved her. But Naomi insisted, and one of them, Ophrah, finally agreed to go home to her birth family. The other young woman, however, was made of sterner stuff. She would not leave Naomi, and that was that. The girl's name was Ruth, and she clung to Naomi, literally clung to her and refused to part. So she would rather stay with her. She was her new family, right? This is significant. Naomi was a mother-in-law, usually the butt of cruel jokes, but in this story, the mother-in-law inspired dogged loyalty. The 2 women, Naomi and Ruth, set off on an arduous journey. It was late summer, and the roads were not safe for 2 lone women. Eventually, however, they arrived in Naomi's hometown, Bethlehem. The whole town seemed to have turned out to see them, but their initial joy soon quieted. Naomi's friends and family were aghast to see how much she had changed. The years were now etched into her face. Can this be Naomi, they ask. Right back at you, says Naomi. Don't call me Naomi, pleasant. Call me Mara, bitter, instead. The years have been unkind to me. I've lost everything. Well, not quite everything. She still has 2 assets. An agile brain, always worth having. and a lovely Ruth standing quietly by her side, looking for a husband. The thing that would solve Naomi's problem was, of course, a rich husband for Ruth. Naomi immediately sets out to find one. She does not have to look far to look. Elimelech, her dead husband, has a relative called Boaz who, through no longer... Oh, okay. Let me slow down. Had a relative called Boaz who, though no longer young, was rich and kindly. Despite his undoubtful suitability as a husband, he is never married. He is a long-standing bachelor, and none of the fond mothers with pretty daughters have been able to change his mind. But he notices Ruth immediately, a good sign. When he sees her gathering surplus grain in one of his fields, there was an injunction in the Bible that the poor be allowed to gather surplus grain. And Boaz is obviously following this injunction, another good sign, which would allude to the fact that he was a good man, right? He approaches Ruth and tells her to gather grain in his field and not to go anywhere else. He tells his worker not to pester her and invites Ruth to help herself to water whenever she needs it, a small thing, but remember that all water had to be carried from a nearby stream. So Boaz was obviously favoring her. "Why are you being so kind?" asked Ruth, though of course she had guessed. "Because you're a woman of good repute," replies Boaz. "And who has given her this good repute?" "Naomi, who has been cleverly extolling Ruth's virtues to all and sundry." Ruth replies with a graceful speech. Her behavior is impeccable. Boaz later invites her to eat with him. No doubt, Boaz's attention to Ruth has been reported back to Naomi, not just by Ruth, but by the village women. Watching agog as the romance develops. How cute. So far, so good, but Boaz is a confirmed bachelor, and Naomi realizes she must nudge him into some sort of definite commitment if she is to get him as a son-in-law. Naomi sets things up. The harvest festival about to be celebrated, and Naomi decides that the time for subtlety is past. She tells Ruth a definite goal to find a home for Ruth where she will be well provided for. She gives Ruth some instructions. Interesting. To wash and perfume yourself and dress in your best clothes. To go to the threshing floor, but stay discreetly hidden from Boaz. To wait until at the end of the evening, Boaz lies down to sleep. Then to lie down beside him, uncover his feet, and wait to see what happens. Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow. Okay. It must be explained that in the Bible, feet was sometimes a euphemism for male genitals. That's pretty forward, you guys. And that there was a good deal of ribald joking at harvest festivals. But Naomi was banking on her belief that Boaz would react honorably in the situation. As you will see, she was a good judge of character. Goodness. Ruth went to the threshing floor and did just as Naomi had told her, except that she took it a step further. She, not Boaz, proposed. "Spread the corner of your garment over for me," she said. At the time, spreading one's garment over someone meant marrying them. Boaz reacted exactly as Naomi had hoped. He immediately offered marriage to Ruth, recognizing that she had put herself in a compromising position, that the honorable thing was to offer marriage. Goodness. There were some minor details to be attended to. The following morning, Boaz met with a council of elders and hammered out the details of a marriage agreement. Wow. But Naomi knew that her plan had worked, and what is more, had worked magnificently. Both women could look forward to a comfortable, happy future. Both women would be well provided for. And the story ended with the best news of all. Naomi, who had once asked to be called bitter, now held her little grandson born to Ruth and Boaz in her arms. Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The woman living there said, Naomi has a son, and they called him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David, King David. In the Bible's way of saying they live happily ever after. Okay, this is interesting. What do the names mean? So everyone's names, Naomi means pleasant, but the name she used later was Mara, which was bitter when she was unhappy. Ruth is a short version of Retut, lovely friend. Boaz means powerful or strong. Malin and Shilon, the sons of Naomi, means sickness and used up. Goodness. Ophrah means back of the neck. She turned her back on Naomi. And Elimelech means my God is king. Main themes of the story: God's unfolding plan. None of the later history of the Jewish people would have happened as it did had Obed not been nudged into marriage by an elderly woman called Naomi. The importance of family. For all their faults, nothing can replace them. Stand by them and expect them to do the same for you. Stay hopeful, even when life seems to bring nothing but misfortune. Naomi was old, grief-stricken, poor, and far from home, but she held on to her courage. Use the resources you have. It just looks like there's a lot of pictures. Let's see. Try and look and see if there's no, that's it. Okay. Nope, that's it. Well, that was a good one. Super good one. I'm going to be moving kind of fast this week because I've got a lot going on. Need to try and have my house listed next week, and I'm in the middle of putting in tile, and it's busy. And I got to do some running this week too. So, oh my goodness. And what is today? Goodness, I don't even know the date. See if my what? Yeah, May 10th already. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Do not resist or run from the difficulties in your life. These problems are not random mistakes. They are hand-tailored blessings designed for your benefit and growth. Embrace all of the circumstances that I allow in your life, trusting me to bring good out of them. View problems as opportunities to rely more fully on me. When you start to feel stressed, that's me right now. Let those feelings alert you to your need for me. Thus, your needs become doorways to deep dependence on me and increasing intimacy between us. Although self-sufficiency is acclaimed in the world, reliance on me produces abundant living in my kingdom. Thank me for the difficulty. Boy, I have to slow down. Thank me for the difficulties in your life, since they provide protection from the idolatry of self-reliance. John 15:5, 2 Corinthians 1:8-9, and Ephesians 5:20. I know that's the one thing I was thinking about is how important it is to remain humble, but life is gonna keep you that way. I think it always has me, and that's good. That's super good. So tomorrow we talk about Ruth, which was pretty cool that she was extremely loyal to Naomi, right? And leads to the King David's birth. Sounds like she was his grandma, maybe. I think that's what I read into it. So that's pretty exciting. With that, it's going to be short ones. Like if I make a half an hour this week, I'm going to be doing well. But I promise once I'm done with my house, get it sold, get on the road, I'm going to start working harder on putting a challenge together, and I'll work harder on research. So Okay, well, happy Monday. Be blessed today. Much love to all of you. Have a wonderful Monday and a great week.